All right, am I going? I think I'm going. Oops. Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to my show. I hope I'm not gonna die here. It looks all right. All right. So my I was in the middle of streaming and I had a hard crash, and I looked on my motherboard and it was a CPU error. So generally, on my system, if I have a CPU error, it's because it was running too hot. I don't have the most efficient cooling setup. Like, it's okay. I could do better. Like, my next system I build in like 5 years, it will be better. But it's a learning curve. And who knows, in 5 years, we may be using something totally different than radiators and fans. Like, so, um, okay. Anyways, oh yeah. And so what I did is I increased the curve. I'm using an AMD card, and I'm using an AMD card, and I'm AMD CPU, and there's something called a curve optimizer, in which you can offset the voltage that you give each individual core, and by giving it less voltage, it reduces the it will if you can give it less voltage but it can still do the work, it means it can run hotter. It means when it does do the work, it's able to go faster for longer because there's less heat, right? Less voltage means less heat. So but again, I told you I'm running on an old setup, dude. I've had my motherboard for like 7 or 6 years, like what, 5 years, 6 years. So it's an old motherboard. I don't think it was never designed to have this kind of chip. Like, when it was made, it didn't even have it in mind. So like, so much so that I had to erase the old BIOS and install a new BIOS. It was no longer backwards compatible. It could no longer support the chips that it was designed to support. It can only support the new chips. So yeah, so like, it's a bit touchy was what I'm saying, right? So I have to run a curve optimizer on it in order to lower the heat. If I don't, it will crash whenever I put it under load, and doing this puts it under load. I had like too many things running, like a browser and like a bunch of other programs. Here, I need to go to a bed so I can sleep. That's not a way to the bed. I want to go this way. Because you probably can't see anything. All right, hey. So, as I was saying, before I was so rudely interrupted by a CPU crash, a total system failure. No, it wasn't a total system failure. I just had it running too hot, and I overclocked my video card. So now I'm running the video card at its stock settings. Like, I'm not doing nothing. Like, at first I had the memory overclocked, but now I'm like, nope, I'm not gonna do anything. That way I can't blame the video card. I want to take the video card out of the equation for as something that could be potentially wrong, because I tinkered with it. Don't tinker with it. Just run it at stock settings and see what happens. Okay, here we go, right? Stock settings on that, but I changed the curve optimizer on the CPU because I think the problem was that the CPU got overheated and couldn't be cooled enough. And that conclusion is based on experience, because this has happened before to me, and it was because the CPU got too hot. Okay. Seems to be okay. Ow. We'll stop right there. No. Farmers working the farm, working the crops. Farmers. All right, what else do we got? So, okay, I was talking about Ronald Reagan for some reason. I was talking about Ronald Reagan. For a lot of you, he was before you were even born, but he's super important because he's a bad guy. It was the first time. I wouldn't say it's the first time, but Ronald Reagan's Iran-Contra affair scandal was way worse than Nixon. Everyone points to Nixon like, oh, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, and he was right for sure. He was like the prototype. But Ronald Reagan was way worse. What did Ronald Reagan do? And I was telling you the story, and then someone came in to ask me, hey, what are you talking about? And then it all crashed. I'm like, sad. So here it is. What did Ronald Reagan top chat. I'm going to put it on all chat. Yeah, okay. What did Ronald Reagan do? Ronald Reagan, in the 1979, so in Iran, there was a coup. They kicked out the Shah of Iran and installed, I don't know if it was 1979, but at some point, the Iranians, well, someone, not the Iranians, but the militaristic regime, the religious extremists in Iran overthrew the Western installed government of Iran. And when they did so, they attacked the U.S. embassy in Iran, and they held a bunch of Americans hostage. They held them hostage. So Jimmy Carter was the president at this time, and Jimmy Carter's administration had secured the release of the hostages, the American hostages. He had secured the release. However, Ronald Reagan had a back channel to the Iranian government and told them, look, if you keep the American hostages until after the election, the Reagan administration will give you a better deal than what you're getting with from the Democrats, from Jimmy Carter. So the Iranian government agreed, and they held on to the hostages, and that cost Jimmy Carter the election. And then when Ronald Reagan came into office, the hostages were released, and it made Ronald Reagan look like he was a real good guy. Even though he wasn't. And then, so remember, the Iranians are enemies. We're the enemies of the United States. Are the enemies of the United States. They're religious extremists. And they use terror to enact their agendas. And they convert with bad regimes like Russia. So Iran's a bad guy. The religious government of Iran is a bad guy. The people are fine. It's the government that's bad. So Ronald Reagan now is now president, and now he's got a connection to the Iranian government. And at that time, the United States had in the Middle East installed a guy named Saddam Hussein inside Iraq. Why did they put a guy named Saddam Hussein inside Iraq? Because he was the guy that was gonna keep things in order. They didn't care how he kept things in order. They just wanted order so they can get things done. And he was of a religion, the Ba'ath Party or something, some minority religion that wasn't with the majority of the people in Iraq who are Shia. So yeah, he just kept religious fighting down brutally. He did it bad. He was a bad guy, right? But he was put into place by the Americans by the West. I don't want the Americans to keep things in order so that resource extraction could be done. Okay. But there's another thing going down way on our side of the world, right? Which is in Nicaragua. And that's like a country in Central America. There was a group, a Marxist group, who I don't know if they're socialist or communist or what. I have to go read it. I mean, I'm just telling you off the top of my head right now. But a group called the Sandinistas won the government. They won power in Nicaragua, and they took power, and they were and their party was antagonistic toward the United States, and I think more antagonistic toward U.S. corporations, because corporations are the entities that do resource extraction. So the Sandinistas were likely, I'm not sure because I have to go look on it, but they were not friendly to the United States interests. So the United States didn't like them. So there was a group of people who called themselves counter-revolutionaries. They wanted to go back to the old way, controlled by where like there was like they were the ruling elite and corporations could do what they want. They're called Contras. They're counter-revolutionaries. Contras for short. You know, contra-revolutionary, whatever. I can't, the Spanish interpretation or word. Okay. Ronald Reagan's administration really wanted to get rid of the Sandinistas who had power in Nicaragua. They really wanted to get rid of them. But they couldn't send U.S. troops, right? Because, you know, there's no war or anything. You can't do that. And besides, yeah, and he was restricted by Congress. Congress wouldn't let him. And he couldn't do business with Iran because Congress wouldn't let him. But he really wanted those Contras to win in Nicaragua. So in order to get them to win, he had to give them weapons. But he couldn't do it because Congress is the one who controls that stuff. So what he did was he made a deal. And I forget what the deal was exactly. I have to go look it up. But there was a deal he made between the United States, Iran, and the Contras. It's like the United States gave weapons to Iran and then got money for it, like secret money though. It wasn't like on the books, it was secret money. And then Reagan's administration used that secret money to fund or arm the Contras in Nicaragua so that they would win in their conflict against the government, you know, controlled by the Sandinistas. And they would overthrow the government again. So it was, and then the Contras weren't good guys, dude. They were bad guys. They had like